That snaps for losers, man. I don't get involved in that stuff, but
Change or Rashad Milligan rolling out.
That's a good question.
Brandon,
Yeah,
you want one quick question?
we can't ask Rashad questions.
This was something that that Joel brought up on Twitter, and I've also seen other people just talk about it, and they were saying like it's a dark hole that you can go down when you see like women athletes, female athletes, and just them being kind of more prone to ACL injuries. So this is from the National Library of Medicine, National Center of Biotechnical Information, and the NIH. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. Female athletes tear their ACL at an alarmingly higher rate in certain sports, including basketball, team handball, and soccer. The participation in sports by girls has increased dramatically in recent times. The rapidly increased numbers of females participating impacts the number of injuries. However, the rates of ACL injuries in comparable sports of basketball and soccer have remained alarmingly high with the change in male to female ratios over the last 10 years. The incidence of female to male is 3.5 times greater in basketball and 2.8 times greater in soccer. She's Louise. The typical mechanism of the injury is a rapid but awkward stop in anticipation of lateral movements. That's exactly what happened to Juju. The ACL tears in 7 MS, dynamic movement patterns that are very different important factors in contributing to ACL injury. The extrinsic and changeable factors that are controlled by the players and coaches. The intrinsic differences between male and female athletes that would explain why women tear ACL 2 to 8 times more frequently than men. Consensus statement. A consistent conference was held in Hunt Valley, Maryland on June 10th, 1999, sponsored by the American Orthopedics Society for Sports Medicine, National Athletic Trainers Association, National Collegiate Athletic Association, and Orthopedic Research ARED Education. They got me there. ARED Education Foundation. The goal of the conference was to discuss an this is anatomy, anatomic, autonomic, there we go, autonomic, environmental, hormonal, biomedical, mechanical risk factors for non-contact ACL injuries, specifically what we know from the written information, areas for further research and prevention strategies. From the written information and presentation of 12 physicians and 9 basic researchers at this retreat, a prevention booklet was published. The categories of the risk factors were, here we go. If it's anatomy, then it's animatic. No. Anatomic. Anatomic. Anatomic, environmental, hormonal, and biomechanical. Neuromuscular factors appear. Non-contact ACL injuries appear in deceleration, cutting, or changing directions and landing. Prior to the injury, non-grip, dynamic body movement, and perturbation. Oh Lord, have mercy. Perturbation events are usually observed. With this, quadriceps activation during eccentric contraction is a major factor in ACL injury during the risk maneuver. Uh, anatomic anatomic risk factors of both of the femoral notch and lower extremity alignment were discussed. Although there is much literature on the role of the femoral notch size in ACL injury, no consensus on the notch's role on an ACL injury can be reached at this time. Identifying sport-specific at-risk motions and positions are encouraging athletes to avoid these at-risk situations when possible seems promising. Further strategies for activating protective neuromuscular responses when at-risk situations are encountered is also a popular prevention strategy. There is a need to improve public and participant awareness for the risk of ACL injuries and the possibilities for prevention. We need to continue to define specific neuromuscular, proprioceptive, and motor control factors associated with ACL injury. Although specific, predicative, and protective factors are determined, training and prevention programs should continue to be implemented, assessed, and improved. From the Consistence Conference, a monograph of prevention strategies have been published. Hormonal. Sex hormones have effects on numerous organs, as evidenced by changes during menarche and menopause. Estrogen, proestrogen, relaxin, and other sex hormones have cyclic effects. There is no consensus of the scientific community that sex hormones play a role in the increased incidence of ACL injury in female athletes. One must understand the hormonal activities during the cycle and hormonal effects during the cycle. In 1998, Wojcicki et al. Reported on a series of 28 women who were found to have ACL injuries than expected during the ovulatory phase and fewer injuries during the follicle phase at the p-value of 0.03. Wow, that's interesting. That's crazy. That's crazy. However, reevaluation of the data led to the discovery of the results that were not statistically significant but only showed a trend. More recently, they have reported that on 69 females with an acute ACL injuries, studied within 24 hours at 4 centers by the menstrual cycles details at urinal hormonal legends. These results supported a significantly greater than expected percentage of ACL injuries during mid-cycle ovulatory phase than and less expected than the luteal or follicle phase. They also reported that oral contraceptives reduced the rate of ACL tears in the ovulatory phase. However, no recommendations are being made to modify practices, activity level, or place females on oral contraceptive pills in the face of these results. In the follicle phase, ACL injuries have been reported reported higher rates of ACL injuries 1 week before menses and just after menses. This is crazy. Slaughterbeck and Hardy also found higher ACL rates before menses. Anatomic differences. Oh, let me see the chat. Okay, the lower extremity static alignment and measurements have been not predicated on ACL injuries. 12 authors frequently slate that the female has a wider pelvis than the male. However, females have narrow pelvises. Horton and Hall found that males with a greater hip width of by 3 centimeters and longer femoral width by 5 centimeters, the ratios of hip width to femoral width were about equal to 0.7 in males and 0.77 to females. Ratios appear to be more important in measurement than the absolute width. Femoral notch. An ACL size and orientation determines that the width and the shape of the femoral notch. Regardless of gender, smaller notches have been associated with increased rate of ACL injury. Most authors report that a smaller ligament is housed in a smaller notch. However, they also use measurements from Japanese knee cadavers to determine ACL cross-sectional area as it relates to notch dimensions. The small notch knees did not have thinner ACL in them. They also reported by a magnetic resonance imaging notch width index between sexes were not statistically significant. With adjustments for body weight, the size of the ACL in girls was found to be statistically smaller than boys. The question remains on whether or not a smaller ligament is more apt to fail. It remains unknown whether a bigger ligament is stronger. There are conflicting data of significance in WI differences between men and women. Such studies have demonstrated that there are no gender-related differences in NWI, whereas other studies have shown that there is a difference between male and female subjects. The reason of the increased injury rate in women remains unclear. It is probably caused by a complex interplay between multiple variables. Other studies suggest that NWI and other morphologic parameters of the osis intercollegial fossa. No, I definitely butchered that. May not be critical etiological factors in the patient of the unilateral or bilateral ACL tour. They also suggested that a narrow intercollegial notch that contains a smaller ACL. This may explain why people with narrow notches have a higher incidence of ACL injuries, but no significant correlation was found after dissecting cadaveric knee joints. They also evaluated 100 high school basketball players by MR imaging. They found no correlation between ACL and notch size. This suggested that the size of the ACL cannot be predicated by the size of the intercollateral notch. These data indicated that a narrow ACL might be with. Okay, so it pretty much just seems like they don't know if women have smaller ACLs usually, but they can't confirm that that means that you're going to be hurt more. Gender differences in neuromuscular activation patterns have been reported to contribute to ACL injury. Compared to males, female found to be less effective in stiffening their knee. Maximum contraction to the knee muscular significantly decrease in the anterior tibial translation in men and women comparing to relaxed contracted states. However, the percentage of knee stiffness was significantly higher at the P equals 0.003 level in male percentages and to females. So it's like, okay, so they're saying men might have stronger knees and hamstrings. Men have bigger knees, but the hip width and the femur the femur to hip ratio might have a thing to do with it. The number one thing that really got me though was the hormones. I had no clue, bro. It's like if you're on your cycle, like you're more prone to tear your ACL. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. Physical movement classes should occur very early in life, teaching children to land safely and in control, similar to the cry or get down, stay down routine heard in youth soccer. Similarly, specific strength training programs can address landing as well as foot movements during cutting in basketball. The thing that Mason and Cam were saying on It Is What It Is was all the players don't wear high tops anymore. All the basketball shoes are low tops now. And since they're low tops, a lot more players are hurting themselves. Like, I think D Rose was even wearing a low top Adidas when he initially hurt himself and stuff like that. And I think, with awkward landing and foot placement and stuff like that on the court, maybe high tops will help a little more. So we might see a transition back to the high tops. I know that Paige did some different kind of like technology when she came back to ensure her health, particularly with her legs and things of that sort. And this worked so well so far this year. And we hope that it continues to the postseason. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing that I got out of this was just number one, the hormone thing. I had no clue, bro. Had no clue, but I hope they continue to study and figure this thing out and protect number two. I hope they continue to figure this thing out so female athletes can, perform at the same rate that male athletes can perform at. So yeah.
That's for losers, man. I don't get involved in that stuff, but
Angel Rashad Milligan rolling out.
That's a good question.
We can't ask Rashad questions.
Hey, Rashad.